joy and its brightness and just become burdened and weighed down and fearful looking. And I thought, I wanted to say something just to reassure her, just to make her feel better. And I thought, I know what she's feeling because I've raised a teenage son. I know how hard that is, watching them struggle into maturity. And I was thinking of my 21-year-old, I was thinking, God, things got so much better as he got older. And so instead of taking her hand, which is what I initially wanted to do, I just gestured over to my son, Eric, as evidence that I knew what I was talking about. And I looked at her earnestly and I said, you know what? I just want to tell you that it gets better. It gets better. The closer your son comes to adulthood, the better it's going to get. The older he is, the easier it will be. I promise. See, and then everything changed. The light just went out of Randa's eyes. Before there'd been something flowing, and now this heavy veil fell between us. The light was gone, the warmth, the trust, all of that connection, gone. She was gone. And in her place was this woman standing rigidly with a pot of coffee and these blank eyes that just looked straight ahead, and she just dropped our check on the table. She said, yeah, whatever, if you say so. And then she turned and walked away. And it was like I'd been slapped in the face. I thought, what happened? I just went over every word in my mind. I couldn't imagine. Had I said something to upset her? I started thinking through memories of conversations with other black women, thinking maybe there I would find some clue as to what I'd said. And, as soon as I did that, didn't take but a minute, and I was back in Connecticut, sitting at the table with Catherine and Georgia and listening to them express what? Not their excitement for their sons to get older, but no, their wish that their sons could stay young forever, knowing that the older they got, the more danger they'd be in. Hearing their anguish as they talked about sending these precious young men out each day into a society that perceives black males as criminals. And then hearing again my own admission, no, I don't know what that feels like. So now I knew what it was that had shattered the trust. I knew what I'd said, because my promise, you see, was a fraud. Things were not necessarily going to get better for her son as he got older. And in fact, it was likely that they would get worse. It was likely that the closer he came to adulthood, the more frequently he would be perceived as dangerous, and therefore the more danger he would be in. And the thing is, I knew this and I forgot. How is that possible to forget a truth like that? I ask myself, is this one of the elements of sneaky white privilege? Having the option to know something, to know a truth, and then forget it because I think that it doesn't apply to my life. And because of my forgetting, any hopefulness that woman had felt had been replaced by the inescapable reality that I was just one more ignorant white woman who actually thought I knew what she faced in her life. So I was sitting there and I'm thinking, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And as soon as I said that, Catherine and Georgia came to my rescue once again. I could see and hear them, I tell you, as clearly as if they were sitting right at that table with me, finishing up their coffee. And they just looked at me. They just looked into my face and they said, get up off your butt, girl, and do something. And I'm talking to them, these invisible women, and I'm saying, I know I will, honest I will, but I don't know what to do. And their voices came in a chorus, yes, you do know. And they were right, I did. I excused myself from the table, and I went to look for Randa. And I looked for her in the lobby. I looked for her all around the restaurant. I even went in the smoking section in the back, which they had back in those days. I even went in the restroom and looked under the doors of the stalls, trying to find her, and I couldn't. And I was ready to go into the kitchen if I had to. And fortunately, I didn't have to go that far because I looked up, and Randa was coming out through the heavy kitchen doors, and she was carrying a big tray covered with plates of food. And she just stopped when she saw me still, and I stood in front of her just still myself, waiting for some kind of inspiration. And finally, I just opened my mouth, and I just let the words fall out, ineloquent and awkward. And I said to her, I'm sorry. I just want to tell you that I'm sorry. I know things are not the same for your son as they are for mine. I know that things will only get harder for him as he gets older. And I knew that. I knew it already, but I forgot. and I know how much I hurt you, and I'm sorry. And I couldn't see any clue on her face about how she felt, and she just looked at me for a really long time, and then she turned, and, I thought she was just going to walk away, which wouldn't have surprised me, really, but she didn't walk away. She set her tray down on a table, and she turned back to me, and then she reached out her arms, and she took me in her arms. She took me and she held me, and we hugged each other really tightly for several minutes, and then all of a sudden, in that hug, she put her head down on my shoulder, and she started to weep. And I tell you, I don't know how long we stood in that embrace, but we were there. We were consoling, rocking, weeping together, each of us giving and taking comfort at the same time. And all the activities of the restaurant bustled unheeded around us. And when her tears were finally spent, she stepped back and looked at me, and she managed a small smile, and she said, it is going to be okay. She said, with you and me, people like us working together, with the help of God, it'll be okay. We'll do it with His help. Now, I just dumbly nodded my agreement. I couldn't speak. I don't remember who looked away first. I don't remember how we parted. I don't remember how I got out the door and into the car. I just remember the rocking and the weeping and the consoling and feeling that web of connection being rewoven as we stood there together. And the only thought in my mind, the only clear thought I had at that moment was, there's a different promise I need to make. And this is the promise that for the rest of my life, I will work for unity, I will work for healing, I will work for justice. That is a promise I can make, and that is a promise that with the help of God, I can keep.
You're on air.
Okay. All right, welcome. I want to thank everyone for joining us for the final installment of the Roots Affirmative Action Policy Parlor Series. My name is Dr. Ivory Tolson. I'm educational contributing editor for The Root, and I am broadcasting live from the offices of the Journal of Negro Education, which is a historic journal that was founded in 1932. Behind me, you'll see stacks of all of our issues dating back way back when, and you can find the writings of W.B. Du Bois and Thurgood Marshall and a lot of the historical figures that laid the foundation for a lot of conversations that we'll be talking about today. Affirmative action has been on the minds of a lot of people over the recent week because of the Fisher versus University of Texas decision. I can't say that it's been at the forefront of a lot of our conversations prior to that over the last few years, as it's been policy that's been implemented. But this is a time where we really have to reflect on what affirmative action means to us right now, because the decision, while it did not kill affirmative action, it laid a pathway for opponents of affirmative action to really be able to do it some harm. So I'm honored today to be joined by Maureen Costello. Maureen Costello leads the Southern Poverty Law Center Teaching Tolerance Training Program, one of the nation's leading providers of anti-bias educational resources. She oversees all aspects of the project, including the award-winning Teaching Tolerance magazine. She develops multimedia teaching kits, professional development resources, and special projects. She's also been involved with the 2010 Census and Schools program for Scholastic Incorporated, one of my daughter's favorite companies. She's also, for 8 years, she also directed Newsweek education program. She's been the academic dean of Notre Dame Academy High School in Staten Island, New York. And she's a graduate of New York University and the New York University Graduate School of Arts and Science. So welcome, Maureen.
Thank you very much. And I'm here in Montgomery, Alabama now.
Right.
It's a long way from New York.
Yeah, and we see the backdrop.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure most of the people listening to this program is very much familiar with Southern Poverty Law Center, because you all have done some outstanding work. You all have worked on some very high-profile cases, and you all are really a jewel in the South and for the rest of the country in leading these efforts. So talk to us a little bit about your reaction to the Supreme Court decision. How is it influencing the way you're approaching some of the issues that you deal with regarding teaching tolerance and making sure that all students have a equal shot at success?
Well, that's one of our big concerns. You know, we started out 22 years ago as a anti-prejudice program and an anti-bias program, but we've really expanded a lot into looking at making schools, especially K-12 schools, more equitable for all students, ensuring that all students have an equal opportunity to learn, and trying to make sure the schools are inclusive in as many ways as possible. And our approach has usually been to work directly or to work with teachers and to provide them with materials and professional development to do that. And when we think about diversity in the last few years, and we think about improving schools, a lot of our work focuses on helping teachers who are predominantly white, female, and frankly over 40, a lot of them, they basically look like me, learn how to teach children who are increasingly not like them. Who may be living in poverty, who are children of color. And we've been adopting a lot of culturally responsive pedagogy and talking about the importance of acknowledging the backgrounds and the strengths and the assets of the children and communities that teachers work in.
Yeah, you're doing some very important work, and for the listening audience, the teacher force overall is 66% white female. It's about 80% white. Black males represent less than 2% of the teaching force. And there's a lot of conversations by NEA, AFT, and certainly the people who are school administrators and the teaching force themselves about how do we make the teaching force more diverse? How do we make the teaching force look more like the students who they're teaching? And also, how do we help the teaching force as it currently exists to be more open to issues related to students of diverse backgrounds? So in many ways, threatening affirmative action threatens that pipeline of diverse teachers who may come into the field, because a lot of the people who might be going to the University of Texas and all the other universities, NYU and my schools, Howard University, and, well, not Howard University since we have mostly black anyway, but Temple University, where I graduated from, they might be affected by this. So what are your thoughts related to that?
Well, I think it's a really large concern. You know, I think when we think about public universities especially, and some of the universities you named aren't, but universities like K-12 schools serve a public good. They're there not just for the benefit of individual students, but they're there for us to be able to produce leaders who are going to carry on for the next generation. And I think that's particularly true when you're talking about public universities like the University of Texas, or here in Alabama, the University of Alabama, because many of the state's leaders, the state's school teachers, the state's attorneys come out of these public universities. And if we want to bring about racial justice, if we want to help, lift people up or help them lift themselves up, there has to be that kind of leadership. And certainly that statistic that you offered, about 2%, we know studies have shown that's not likely to increase, because there are lots of other opportunities for black professional men to go into, and in fact they're already overrepresented in the teaching profession. It's actually one of the chief occupations of black men in professions.
Right, yeah.
We have to do both. We have to work on ensuring that our colleges are diverse so that our workforce, our leadership force, our government, medical professionals, lawyers are also representing the people that we are.
Yes.
And we also have to have, well, speaking for K-12, we need to have schools that know how to make those faculty folks feel welcome.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we hear from a lot of teachers who really feel like they're the one and